I was there, pickaxe in hand, about to destroy the most sacred cave in the Black Mountains when I heard that child's voice coming from within the stones. She said I'd be safe here. In that moment, my whole life crumbled like the rocks I intended to demolish because I was Sebastian Ramallo, the man who believed in nothing but the power of money and force, and an unknown sick child was showing me that I understood absolutely nothing about the mysteries of this life. Let me go back to the beginning because this story needs to be told from the start so you understand how an Iron Man can be broken and rebuilt in a matter of hours. My name is Sebastian, but everyone knew me as Colonel Ramallo. I wasn't a military man, no. It was just how they called the powerful men of the region, those who ruled the lands of the Black Mountains as if they were kings of a small kingdom forgotten by God. I grew up watching my father, old Ramallo, treating the workers like cattle, paying them miserably and demanding work from sunup to sundown. I learned early on that in this world you either command or obey, you either eat or are eaten. There was no room for weakness, much less for those church and saint things that the women kept whispering about in their houses. When my father died, I inherited not only the land but also the hardness he planted inside me like a stone seed. For 40 years I expanded our domains. I bought land, built houses, opened roads, all with an iron fist and a closed heart. People respected me because they feared me, and I thought that's how life should be. I never needed God for anything, never asked for help from any saint. When someone came to tell me about a miracle or divine protection, I would laugh in their face. A miracle, I'd say, is having money in your pocket and bullets in your gun. High in the Black Mountains there was this small cave almost hidden among the trees, a natural cavern where someone, a long time ago, placed a statue of Our Lady. I don't know when it started, but the locals had the custom of going up there to light candles, leave flowers, make promises, mostly women. They went up with sick children, unemployed husbands, broken hearts, thinking that this painted plaster lady was going to solve their problems. I passed by that cave every week when I went to inspect the farms in the mountains, and I always saw these people there on their knees whispering prayers. That irritated me deeply, not because I was angry at their faith, but because I thought they were wasting time on nonsense when they could be working, producing, building something useful. To me, religion was opium for the weak, and I had no patience for weak people. It was at the beginning of this year that the opportunity arose to extract limestone from the Black Mountains. A company from Belo Horizonte was interested in a multi-million-dollar contract for the supply of building materials. The problem is that the best stone, the purest, was exactly in the area of the cave. When the engineers came to do the measurements, they were clear. Colonel, this cave will have to go. It's right in the middle of the extraction zone. I didn't think twice. Business is business, and that backwoods church wasn't going to stand in the way of my progress. I called my trusted men, John, Little Joe, and a few others who always accompanied me on heavy work. Next week you go up there and take care of that cave. Dynamite, pickaxe, whatever you need. But by Friday I want it gone. The news spread through town like wildfire. In 2 days there was a crowd banging on my door, begging me to change my mind. Old men came, women crying, even children tugging at my shirt, all with the same story. Colonel, for God's sake, don't touch the cave. The lady has protected us for decades. That's a sacred place. Margaret, an old woman with white hair who did laundry for the families in town, was the most insistent. She showed up every day on my porch, always with the same request. Colonel Sebastian, you don't understand. That cave saved my grandson from pneumonia that the doctors said was incurable. It saved Tonico's family when their house caught fire and they took refuge there. It saved so many families from storms, droughts, and diseases. You can't destroy this. I listened patiently, but my answer was always the same. Margaret, I respect your faith, but I need to feed 300 families who work for me. This stone contract will provide jobs for everyone, will bring money to the region. I can't let superstition hinder development. And I always ended with the same provocation: if this saint has so much power, let her come down and talk to me personally. I'm right here. On the Thursday before the scheduled demolition, something strange happened. The sky over the Black Mountains became filled with dark clouds, but it wasn't the rainy season. A cold wind began to blow, tearing off roof tiles and frightening the animals. People became restless, commenting that it was a sign that the saint was angry. I, of course, thought it was all nonsense. Weather changes happen all the time, period. That night I slept badly, not because of the wind or the clouds, but because there was something in the air that made me uneasy. It was as if the mountain itself was breathing differently. I woke up several times, looked out the window, but saw nothing unusual, just that strange feeling, a sensation I had never felt before in my life. Friday, I woke before sunrise. I had my black coffee as usual, put on my leather hat and mounted Thunder, my sorrel horse. My men were already waiting with the tools, pickaxes, sledgehammers, ropes, and 2 sticks of dynamite in case the rock proved harder than we expected. Today's the day, I thought. Today this miraculous grotto story ends. The ride to the Black Mountains was eerily quiet. Normally, at this hour you'd hear birds singing, the rustling of animals in the bushes. But that morning everything was silent, as if nature itself was holding its breath. My men were also quieter than usual. John, who always chatted during the journey, was serious, staring at the ground. When we got close to the grotto, the first thing I noticed was a strange light emanating from inside the cave. It wasn't candlelight, it wasn't lantern light, it was a soft white light that seemed to come from the stone itself. It was too early for the sun to be hitting at that angle, yet there was this bright glow illuminating the grotto's entrance. Colonel, John said, "Do you see that light?" "I see it," I replied, not wanting to make a big deal of it. "Must be a reflection of something. Let's get this over with." But deep down, something inside me was stirring. It was a strange feeling, as if I were being watched by eyes I couldn't see. I shook my head, trying to dismiss these thoughts. "Sebastian," I said to myself, "you're getting old and impressionable. It's just a grotto, just a rock." I dismounted and walked to the cave entrance. The light was stronger now, almost blinding. Inside the grotto, I could see the image of Our Lady, small, simple, surrounded by extinguished candles and withered flowers. It was a common scene, one I'd seen dozens of times, nothing to justify all that veneration. "Get it done," I ordered my men. "Start with the side walls and work your way to the center." John took the pickaxe and struck the first blow against the grotto wall. The sound echoed strangely, as if the stone were hollow inside. He struck a few more times and suddenly stopped with a look of astonishment on his face. "Colonel, something's wrong here." "Wrong how?" "This sound. It's not the sound of breaking stone. It's like something's alive in there." I thought he was getting needlessly nervous. "John, you've broken more stone in your life than anyone. It's just fear of messing with holy things. Keep working." But he was right. There was something different about that sound. It wasn't the dry sound of the pickaxe hitting rock. It was a muffled sound, as if there were an empty space behind the wall. Little Joe also started hitting with the sledgehammer, and the same strange sound repeated. Suddenly, we heard something that made everyone stop working. It was a voice, a weak, childlike voice, coming from inside the grotto, a voice that said, "Please don't break the lady's house." A shiver ran down my spine. My men exchanged glances, frightened. There was no one there when we arrived. We had checked the entire grotto before starting work. How could someone be inside? "Who's there?" I shouted into the cave. The voice answered, clearer now, "It's me, sir. I'm down here." I took a flashlight and advanced into the grotto. The strange light was still there, but now I realized it was coming from below, from a crack in the stone I had never noticed before. I crouched down and looked through the crack. Down below, in a small natural cavity, there was a girl. She was a child of about 7, very pale, visibly ill. She was sitting at the feet of the image of Our Lady, holding a small rosary in her trembling hands. Her eyes were very large in her thin face, and she looked at me with a mixture of fear and trust I had never seen in anyone. "How did you get there?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "She brought me," the girl replied, pointing to the image of the saint. "I was very sick, and my grandmother told me to ask the lady for help. When I got here, I found this little hole and went down. She said I would be safe here." At that moment, my world began to crumble. I was there to destroy a grotto, and there was a sick child hidden exactly where I intended to use dynamite. If we hadn't heard her voice, if we had started with the dynamite instead of the pickaxes, "John," I shouted to my men, Get the ropes. Let's get this girl out of there. But when we tried to descend to where she was, we discovered that the crack was deeper than it appeared. The rope we had wasn't enough. We needed more equipment, more men, maybe even call the fire department from the nearest town. Don't worry about me, said the girl, with a serenity that wasn't normal for a child of that age. I'm fine here. The lady is taking care of me, and indeed, she seemed strangely calm for someone trapped in a stone cavity. She wasn't crying, she wasn't screaming, she wasn't showing despair. She just stayed there, holding the rosary and looking at the image of the saint as if she were having a silent conversation with her. Then something happened that changed everything. A terrible roar echoed through the mountains, so strong that it made the stones of the grotto tremble. We ran outside and saw that part of the hillside had collapsed, completely blocking the path we had climbed. Tons of rock and earth covered the trail, making it impossible to descend the same way we ascended. Colonel, John said, his voice trembling, how are we going to get out of here? I didn't know either. I knew that land like the back of my hand, but I'd never needed to leave the mountains by any path other than the main trail. We were trapped, me, my men, and a sick little girl, in a rock cavity. That's when I remembered something Margaret had told me weeks before. She'd mentioned an old path, a narrow trail that went behind the grotto and descended the north face of the mountain. It's a path only a few know, she'd said, a path Our Lady protects for those in need. At the time, I thought it was nonsense, but now it was our only way out. I explained the situation to the girl, who remained surprisingly calm. Can you walk? I asked. I can, she replied, but only if the lady comes too. I thought she was referring to some lady I didn't know, perhaps the grandmother she'd mentioned. Which lady? I asked. She pointed to the image of Our Lady in the grotto. Her. I can't leave without her. Normally, I would have thought it childish nonsense, but after everything that had happened that morning, something inside me was changing. Carefully, I removed the image from the grotto. It was lighter than I imagined, made of simple plaster, hand-painted with colors faded by time. We managed to get the girl out of the crevice using makeshift ropes from our belts and scraps of rope. When she came out, I could see her condition better. She was very thin, feverish, breathing with difficulty. It was obvious she was seriously ill and needed urgent medical attention. We started looking for the path behind the grotto. It wasn't easy to find. It really was an old trail, almost overgrown, marked only by small piles of stones that could easily be missed by someone who didn't know what they were looking for. The descent was long and difficult. The trail was narrow, full of twists and loose rocks. We carried the girl in our arms, taking turns, while she held the image of Our Lady tightly, and throughout the journey, something happened that I can't explain to this day. The girl got better with every step. When we took her from the grotto, she had a high fever, rapid and shallow breathing, pale and cold skin. But as we descended the trail, her breathing became calmer, her fever subsided, and color returned to her cheeks. It was as if with every meter we covered, she regained a little more life. My men noticed it too. John whispered to me, "Colonel, look at the color that's come back to her face." Little Joe shook his head, amazed. It's unexplainable. When we finally reached the village, it was midday. The girl was completely different from the sick child we found in the grotto. She ran, played, laughed like any healthy child. The transformation was so evident that people in the street stopped to stare, commenting among themselves about the miracle that had happened. We took the girl to Dr. Antonio, the only doctor in town. After carefully examining her, he called us in for a private conversation. "Colonel," he said, with a perplexed expression, "this child had a severe lung infection. From the symptoms you described, she should have been hospitalized, perhaps even at risk of death. But now she's completely cured. I have no medical explanation for this." We found out that the girl's name was Anna. She was an orphan, and lived with an elderly aunt on the outskirts of town. The aunt confirmed that Anna had been ill for weeks, that the medicines weren't working, and that the previous night she had disappeared from home. When I woke up, she wasn't in bed, the old woman said, crying. I searched everywhere, until some neighbors told me that a child had gone up to the grotto during the night. We spent the rest of the day trying to understand what had happened. How did a 7-year-old girl, sick and weak, manage to climb to the mountain alone at night? How did she know about the crevice in the grotto? How did she manage to get down there? And most importantly, how did she recover so suddenly and completely? But what bothered me most wasn't these unanswered questions. It was what I felt inside myself. Something had changed in my way of seeing the world. The Iron Man who climbed the mountain that morning no longer existed. In his place, there was someone who discovered that there are things in this life that cannot be explained by force or money. That night, alone in my room, I picked up the image of Our Lady that the girl Anna had insisted I keep. She wants to stay with you, the child had said. She told me. It was just a small plaster sculpture, simple, without any commercial value, but when I looked at it, I felt a peace I had never felt before in my life. The next day, I canceled the contract with the stone mining company. I would lose a lot of money, but I didn't care. I had my men remove the stones that blocked the main trail, and then I ordered them to build a stone staircase to the grotto, to make it easier for people to visit. But that wasn't all. In the following days, I started doing things that were completely out of character. I raised my workers' salaries, I had a school built for the children of the region, I financed the renovation of the town's church, and every night, I climbed to the grotto to light a candle and spend a few minutes in silence. If you're following these accounts of transformation, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other stories like this, because life is full of miracles waiting to happen to people like you and me. The townspeople noticed the change, of course. At first, many were suspicious. Colonel Ramalho's gone mad, some whispered. Must have hit his head in the cave-in. Others thought it was a strategy, that I was up to something. But in time, they saw the change was real. Margaret was one of the first to accept my transformation. Colonel, she said one afternoon, you've discovered what I've been trying to explain for years. Faith isn't weakness, it's the most powerful force there is, because it connects us to something greater than ourselves. Anna became like a daughter to me. I paid for her education, took care of her health, watched her grow into a bright and kind young woman, and whenever anyone asked about that day in the grotto, she'd smile and say, "You saved me," but it saved the colonel too. Over the months, the grotto became more visited than ever. People came from distant towns to pray, to ask for blessings, to give thanks for miracles received, and I, who once wanted to destroy that place, became its greatest protector. I built a small house in the Black Mountains, near the grotto, where I spend my weekends. It's a simple place, without luxury, where I can be silent and reflect on life. It was there that I learned to pray. At 60 years old, it was there that I learned that humility isn't weakness, but wisdom. Today, 10 years after that day that changed my life, I still climb to the grotto every week. I bring flowers, light candles, talk silently with Our Lady, and whenever I see someone suffering, someone sick, someone hopeless, I tell the story of Anna and the miracle I witnessed. Many people ask me if I really believe it was a miracle. My answer is always the same. I saw a hopeless child, completely healed in a matter of hours. I saw nature itself move to protect a sacred place. I saw my heart of stone turn into a heart of flesh. If that's not a miracle, then I don't know what is. Dr. Antonio, the doctor who examined Anna, retired a few years ago, but before he left he confessed to me, "Colonel, in 40 years of medicine, I've never seen anything like what happened to that girl. She was dying in the morning and playing in the afternoon. I have no scientific explanation, but I'm sure I witnessed something supernatural. What strikes me most, looking back, is how blind I was to the signs. For years, I heard stories from people who had received blessings at the grotto. Margaret always told of the miracles she had witnessed. Other families reported healings, protections, solutions to impossible problems, but I refused to see, because I was trapped in my own pride. Pride is a terrible prison. It makes us think we own the truth, that our world view is the only correct one. It prevents us from seeing the beauty of mystery, the strength of faith, the power of love. For 40 years, I lived in that prison, thinking I was free because I had money and power. But true freedom came when I admitted I knew nothing, when I recognized that there are forces in this world that are far beyond my understanding, when I bowed before the mystery and let it transform me from within. Anna, now a 17-year-old, is studying to be a nurse. She wants to dedicate her life to caring for the sick, as Our Lady cared for me, she says. She has a simple and deep faith that teaches me every day. When she talks about that day in the grotto, she always says she remembers everything with absolute clarity. I was dying, Colonel, she told me recently. I felt my body getting weaker and weaker, my breathing more and more difficult. But when I reached the grotto, I felt a very strong presence embracing me. It was as if a mother was comforting me, telling me that everything would be all right. And when you arrived with your men, I knew it was part of the plan, that you needed to be saved too. That phrase struck me deeply. You needed to be saved too. It's true, I was as lost as that sick child. My illness was hardness of heart, the inability to love, spiritual blindness, and Our Lady healed me too, in her way, in her time. Today, my lands are managed differently. My workers have decent wages, their families have medical care and education. We built a cooperative so they can sell their products directly, without intermediaries. It's work I do with pleasure, because I've discovered that true wealth isn't in having, but in giving. The grotto remains there, high in the Black Mountains, illuminated by that mysterious light we've never been able to explain. Pilgrims climb that stone staircase I had built, bringing their requests, their pains, their hopes, and many return with stories of blessings received, of small and great miracles that happen to those who have faith. I've become a kind of guardian of that place, not official, not appointed by anyone, but by my own choice. I take care of the cleaning, maintenance, and security. I talk to the visitors, listen to their stories, share mine, and whenever someone is going through a difficult situation, I tell about that day when a sick girl taught me that miracles do exist. Sometimes, late at night, when I'm alone in the grotto, I feel the same presence that Anna described. It's a feeling of deep peace, unconditional love, absolute protection. I don't see anything, I don't hear words, but I feel a communication that goes beyond the senses. It's as if Our Lady is telling me that everything is all right, that I'm on the right path, that I'll never be alone again. My life has changed completely. Where there was harshness, now there is tenderness. Where there was selfishness, now there is generosity. Where there was disbelief, now there is a deep and serene faith. It's not a blind, fanatical faith. It's a faith based on experience, on what I saw and lived. It's a faith that gives me strength to face each day with gratitude and hope. Many people seek me out to hear my story. They come from afar, sometimes, just to talk to the colonel who became a saint. As some joke, I'm not a saint, of course. I'm just a man who was lucky enough to witness a miracle, and wise enough to let it transform me. When I tell my story, I always emphasize that the miracle wasn't just the healing of young Anna. The greatest miracle was the change in my heart, because healing a sick body is extraordinary, but transforming a hardened soul is even more extraordinary. And that second miracle continues to happen every day, with every act of kindness, every moment of compassion, every prayer whispered in the quiet of the grotto. If you've come this far in this story, it's because you're also searching for something. Maybe you're going through difficulties. Maybe you're questioning your faith. Maybe you're feeling that life has lost its meaning. I want you to know that miracles still happen. They may not come in the way we expect, in the time we desire, but they come, and sometimes, they come disguised as tragedy, loss, situations that seem impossible. What I've learned is that we need eyes to see, and a heart to receive. We need to free ourselves from the arrogance that makes us think we control everything, that we understand everything. We need to have the humility of a child, who, even sick and afraid, trusts that someone greater is taking care of her. Today, at 70, I live each day as if it were a gift. I wake up in the morning, thanking for another day of life, for another opportunity to do good, to serve, to love. It's a different happiness than I thought I knew. It doesn't come from what I have or what I've achieved. It comes from what I am and what I can give. Young Anna, when she graduated from high school, gave a graduation speech that moved me to tears. She said, "Today, I graduate, but my true education began in a grotto, at the age of 7, when I learned that we are not alone in this world, that there is a greater force that loves us unconditionally, and is always ready to help us, as long as we have enough faith to accept that help." These words summarize everything I have lived and learned. We are not alone, no matter how difficult our situation, no matter how lost we feel. There is a greater force that loves and protects us. We just need to have enough faith to accept this protection, this help, this love. And so, every Friday, at the exact time I intended to destroy the grotto 10 years ago, I go up there to give thanks, to thank for being prevented from committing that sacrilege, to thank for having found Anna at that exact moment, to thank for the transformation that changed not only my life, but the lives of so many people around me. I always take a bouquet of wildflowers, picked along the way. They are the same simple flowers that pilgrims have always brought: daisies, violets, small field roses. I light a special, thicker candle that lasts the whole week, and I stay there, in silence, reviewing in my memory every detail of that extraordinary day. Sometimes, other visitors find me there and ask me to retell the story. I never tire of telling it, because every time I talk about the miracle, I feel again that loving presence that transformed me. It's as if I'm reliving the experience, as if the miracle is happening again, renewing my faith and my gratitude. A few months ago, a young doctor from Sao Paulo came to see me. He had heard about the story through Dr. Antonio, his professor at medical school. He wanted to study Anna's case, to understand scientifically what had happened. We talked at length, and at the end he said to me, "Colonel, I may not be able to explain what happened, but I can't deny that it happened, and that makes me question many things I learned in medicine." This young man returned several times, always with more questions, always more interested in understanding the spiritual dimension of the healing. Today, he works at a hospital in Sao Paulo, but he writes to me regularly, telling me about patients who have recovered in inexplicable ways, about moments when he felt a greater force guiding his hands during difficult surgeries. "Colonel," he wrote in his last letter, "your story changed the way I practice medicine. I learned that healing is not just about applying techniques and medications. It's also about believing. It's about praying. It's about trusting that there is a higher power working through us." These words filled me with joy, because they showed that the miracle continues to multiply, touching other lives, inspiring other transformations. That's what happens when we witness something truly supernatural. We can't keep it to ourselves. We need to share. We need to tell. We need to plant seeds of faith and hope in the hearts we meet along the way. Anna, who is now in her second year of nursing school, recently told me about an internship she did at a children's oncology hospital. "Colonel," she said, "when I see those sick children, I remember how I was that day in the grotto, and I tell them about Our Lady, about how she healed me. about how miracles still happen. It's not preaching, it's not forcing religion on anyone, it's simply planting a seed of hope. Therefore, when people ask me for my advice for those going through difficult times, I always say, pay attention. God speaks to us in many ways, through many people. Sometimes, it's through a child. Sometimes, it's through an unexpected event. Sometimes, it's through the silence that forces us to look within ourselves. And I always end with the same words. Have faith, not blind faith, but a faith based on the certainty that we are unconditionally loved, that our lives have a purpose, that even in the darkest moments, there is a light waiting for us. This is my story. This is my truth. This is the testimony I want to leave for the world. Miracles exist, transformations are possible, and God's love is real and present in our lives. We just need eyes to see, hearts to feel, and humility to accept. May Our Lady of the Black Mountains bless every person who hears this story. May she touch their hearts as she touched mine, and may each of us become an instrument of her kindness and mercy in this world that so desperately needs faith, hope, and love. Thank you for listening. May God bless you all.